I'm joined now by Raoul Gufflet, who is the Deputy Chief Executive of Mauritius Commercial Bank. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Big discussions underway at the moment, and many people feeling a little less inspired about growth so far as the African economic context is concerned. What's your view on that rather broad discussion point?
Indeed, I think it's quite a change compared to the two previous editions of the Africa CEO Forum, where there was a lot of enthusiasm around growth on the African continent. Obviously, what has happened over the past 8 to 12 months has significantly changed the landscape and the way the corporations and the banks and the whole economy is being perceived on the African continent. So not only was I surprised, but at the same time, I think it was good that we talk about different topics. And I can see from the panel discussions that already took place since the beginning of the day that the scope has been extended in a way so that we can talk about other topics which encompass education and young talents, succession planning, and or digitalisation, which are topics that are crucial to the future growth of the African continent.
And I know Mauritius Commercial Bank is fully invested in the education space, so we will come to that in just a moment. But it's also been made very, very clear in discussions over and over that Africa is 54 individual countries. And perhaps now you can bring to bear a little about the Mauritius context when it comes to this discussion.
I think people tend to forget about this diversity of the African continent, and some of the discussions I've had, and one of the panel discussions I've actually happened to participate in, was to me a vivid testimony that sometimes the attendees tend to forget about this diversity. MCB, we believe that we are an African bank, but we are first and foremost engraved into the Mauritian economy. We've been banking with our community for more than 178 years.
1838, if my research
yes,
serves me correct.
Makes quite a young dynamic lady when we look at what we have achieved over the past 15 years in our growth outside of the shores of Mauritius. We have a presence in the region. We are basically a regional bank in the Indian Ocean with some glimpses of African touches. And we believe we have a nice story to tell. That's a very different story than the South African banks can tell, and a very different story than what the Nigerian or other big players in the SADC and COMESA, Eastern Africa, can talk about. We are a partnership bank, and we have grown our presence on the African continent by building strong partnership, first with banks, now with some development financial institutions, and hopefully within the next 2-3 years with some large corporates on the African continent.
What about the SMME environment? That also is garnering a lot of attention, specifically at forums like this, in terms of driving that engine of growth, specifically for Mauritius. And I know it is a focal point for Mauritius Commercial Bank.
Yes, the Mauritius Commercial Bank has gone through some radical changes over the past 8-10 years. We have embarked into a very big transformation program from the core banking system to the way we manage our human resources, trying to work very heavily on the Mauritian diaspora to bring them back into Mauritius. And I think the government has also had some initiatives to facilitate the return with tax incentive of this Mauritian diaspora, which have, in a way, helped MCB to attract very young talents, dynamic people with an international exposure, which have helped us think through the different challenges that the bank will and has been facing over the past 4 or 5 years. Digitalisation is one of the key aspects of one of our medium-term growth strategy. We have radically changed the way we approach business with our customers. We have gone into...
So are you reaching out to small businesses with digitization projects?
We are reaching out to the white generation with a very tangible, vivid app that we call Juice, which has allowed us to reach the masses and allow them to actually get in contact with what we believe is the future generation of banking that is shying away from the brick and mortar. If my research
proves me correct, then again, this is the only online banking platform in Mauritius. Is that correct?
It is the only banking platform online in Mauritius. Some of the competition are trying now to have a similar model, but we enjoy the monopoly for the time being. Obviously, the penetration is not as good as we would have expected. I think we have reached about 120 or 140,000 subscribers of this service. out of a population of 1.2 million inhabitants and out of a population of 1 million people who actually have a savings account with MCB. We could do better, but we are facilitating this penetration through various marketing approaches, and I think we are going to be successful. We recently set up our own microfinance bank as well, which is also trying in a way not to cannibalize our existing retail franchise, but trying to approach the smaller market of the population and who actually are, for the time being, more or less unbanked.
Now, many would say that's a very high-risk environment. What would your response be to them?
Well, it all depends on the partnership you create. We have managed to create some partnerships whereby we have the necessary guarantees, and it's also part of what I would call our social responsibility. It's as a bank who has more than 50% of the domestic market share, it is a fiduciary duty for us to try and embark the whole of the population into banking.
Raoul, I said I'd come back to education, which obviously Mauritius Commercial Bank is heavily invested in. Perhaps you can tell me a little bit about your initiatives in this space and why it's so important, you believe, to the economies that you serve.
I think it's not just MCB. I think it's Mauritius, and I think the government, through the initiative of creating smart cities, has favoured a context whereby we have some of the clients from the private sector who have served the wave of the education and who have positioned themselves as hub, like Mauritius is also planning to position itself as an education hub for African students to come to Mauritius. And those companies have managed to sign some very, very solid partnerships with high schools in France or in the UK. So you will be able within the next 2 or 3 years to study to study curriculum from Central, from ESSEC, from ESCP, and obviously MCB as a bank, we will do everything we can to promote those activities, because we believe that they will allow us to retain some of those African students who would then become the diaspora of the African
Raoul, we're
market.
almost out of time, but just in closing, CNBC Africa broadcasts to 48 countries across sub-Saharan Africa. To all those who are watching this interview right now, why Mauritius? You've already alluded to the fact that you can take advantage of the negativity surrounding economies like South Africa and Nigeria. Why Mauritius, sir?
Well, it's easy. Mauritius is a nice place to be. It's a dynamic, vibrant economy with very welcoming people, highly educated, bilingual, with a very solid legal and judicial environment, and with a strong bank to bank with.
I've been speaking to Raoul Gufflet, who is the Deputy CEO of Mauritius Commercial Bank.